In order to cultivate bodhicitta, one needs a valid basis. One needs a perfect human rebirth. Not just a human rebirth, but one with 18 freedoms and qualities. One needs a continuous stream of perfect human rebirths to be able to complete the Bodhisattva path. In developing bodhicitta via the 6 causes and 1 effect, or equalizing and exchanging self for others, we meet many obstacles. How can we overcome those obstacles? How can we transform them? Verse 2 gives the advice to abandon one's home. In a worldly sense, any advice to abandon one's home would be due to it being very violent or unharmonious or not clean, and you would move to somewhere where it is more peaceful or more conducive, more clean. The meaning here is very different. The meaning here is examining our environment to see whether it's conducive for developing the thought of definite emergence, for developing loving kindness and compassion and bodhicitta. We need to follow the advice of the Bodhisattvas and great teachers of the past. Really examine our own situation to see whether our situation is conducive to our practice. We need to seek a place that is really helpful to our development of bodhicitta. Our hearing the Dharma, reflecting on that Dharma, and meditating repeatedly on those topics. So what are the type of obstacles that hinder our practice of bodhicitta? The first obstacle is living with people which cause strong attachment to arise in us. The problem is not the people themselves, but the fact that we have a strong attachment for them. That attachment makes impartiality very difficult to develop. If impartiality is difficult to develop, then how will we be able to develop the other 6 causes for bodhicitta? we definitely need to be free of that attachment. If we're serious about aspiring to the Bodhisattva paths, we need to look at what arises in our mind. We need to examine what afflictions are arising easily. Whatever afflictions arise, then our wisdom and the other antidote minds will be very weak. We struggle with the affliction of attachment like struggling in a torrent of water. Due to strong feelings of closeness to loved ones and family, we're distracted by that attachment. Observe how our aims to help them, to assist them, to distract us from cultivating our Dharma practice. We get drawn into worldly activities habitually. Confusion arises. We also adopt the aims of the family we're living with. To illustrate this point, if somebody offered us a kilo of diamonds or a kilo of silver, both are very valuable, but diamonds are more valuable. So we need to be aware of the function of attachment. It prevents our own wisdom from seeing what is more valuable. We feel we need to help our family in a more worldly way, which is beneficial. But it's more beneficial to use our time in Dharma practice to benefit ourselves, our family, our friends, extending out to all sentient beings. So examining in this way, we give up the thought, thinking that I have to be with them, I have to help them. And instead we see that we've received kindness from all sentient beings equally. And rather than being focused just on our own family, our own circle, we have a much broader aim. A much wider task. And we really need the help of a conducive environment. Until we develop the ultimate state of Buddhahood, we won't be able to perfectly help all sentient beings. So the first obstacle in our immediate environment is that of attachment. The second obstacle is that of anger that blazes like an inferno. If we have attachment to our friends and family, those around us, we will also have anger. We get impatient and upset and angry with those who harm our circle. Or even certain people within our family and friends that we're very attached to then say something we don't like or harm us in other ways. Afflictions are dominant, so we have no mental space to reflect on the Dharma. The antidotes don't spring to mind because we're not familiarizing with them. Observe how easy it is to get upset when others give an angry look or use words that are unpleasant or do things we don't want them to do. We need to recognize that we are beginners and how it's difficult for any beginner to give rise to positive minds. It's almost impossible. And the third obstacle is that of the darkness of ignorance. Ignorance is like darkness because it obscures what we need to adopt and discard. We may have heard many teachings, but without following up and practicing diligently, the remedies to anger and attachment do not come to mind. We struggle to remember the Dharma. And even if we do, it's not there ready when the problems arise. So we accumulate a lot of negative karma even though we know intellectually what to cultivate and what to discard, we find it difficult to really abandon negativities because of these poisonous minds. A skilled practitioner will be aware in any particular situation that arises, and they will easily be able to counter it. However, we lack that habituation with positive minds. This is shown by our lack of mindfulness. The darkness of ignorance should be understood as like a pitch black, dark night. Not the half light of dusk or in the moonlight, but without moon or without stars. Without a torch. In the darkness we walk into water or mud or trip on something. So wisdom is likened to a light. But when ignorance is powerful, it destroys the torch of wisdom. We may have heard many teachings, but they don't come to mind. We can't turn to the antidotes to the afflictions. And those further negative karmas we create will ensure that we remain bound in the future, again being subject to attachment, anger, and ignorance. The aspiring Bodhisattvas of the past really saw how important it was to help ourselves with a conducive environment. The aspiring Bodhisattvas of the past were able to find an abode that was without particular friends and family and people that influence us away from our Dharma practice. They recognized they needed that for their own development. It wasn't a rejection of the friends and family themselves. They knew that later, when bodhicitta was developed and was very stable and the antidotes were very familiar, that they could re-enter society and not be overcome by the obstacles, but they would be able to transform those obstacles, those same circumstances, and benefit their own practice as well as benefiting the very friends and family and all sentient beings by that transformation. So the loved ones are not being abandoned, but impartiality is being abandoned, as is attachment, anger, and ignorance. These three poisons, attachment, anger, and ignorance, are the chains that keep us bound within samsara. By abandoning our home, we stop the obstacles to realizing our full human potential. Bodhisattvas are aiming to overcome all the afflictive minds and also the mind of self-cherishing. That greatly assists the afflictive minds. Shakyamuni Buddha said that whenever afflictions arise in your mind, you should not let them remain for even a brief moment. So a place where these minds abound and arise often is a place we should abandon. Just as a sprout, when it's planted in extreme conditions of cold or heat or drought, it can't grow, it can't last. So our aspirations for the Mahayana paths make us like a young sprout. We have to take care of this budding aspiration. And free ourselves from the obstacles that obstruct its nurturing, its growth, its healthy development. We need to leave home and go to an isolated place and rely continually on our spiritual teachers that help us. The great scholar Atisha said that the home is like being put in a monstrous prison. The householder's activities are like shackles that bind us. Free yourself from negative activities and unwholesome friends. Milarepa advised us to quickly escape from the monstrous prison of your home that is so difficult to escape from. He said this because we need freedom from the negative minds. And we need every single positive advantage. So we need to go somewhere isolated and follow the spiritual guide and achieve something meaningful with our special human life. And there's another quote from Zangpo. One's home is a repository of the 5 poisons. So attachment, anger, ignorance, as well as jealousy and pride. So all this advice backs up Thogme Zangpo's advice, encouraging us as beginners that are habituated with afflictive minds to make changes, to examine our situation and really make the changes that are required in our current circumstances. Is this situation I'm in helpful or not? So in this time of the coronavirus, the medical practitioners are like the lamas of the past, telling us how to behave and how not to be harmed by the different contact we have with people. Just as the lamas help us by giving instructions how not to be harmed by our own afflictions, we need to see the impediments of being consumed by busyness of worldly activities and endless, meaningless, mundane concerns. So it's the practice of a Bodhisattva to abandon the home in this way. Janchu senchu rinpoche ma ke panyam ke gushe ke panyam pa me pa ye gong ne gong du pao pa shu.